talk about self-awareness, as four really experienced coaches, I think it's something that is often a bit of an enigma for people. They think it's something that you can just do a course on and it happens on one day and you can tick that box. But I think, it's so much more than that for you as a person, not just as a leader or a coach. It just sort of envelopes all that you are, and it's that sort of forever journey. And I think, for us to sort of just all share our thoughts around what self awareness means to us, the things that we continue to do
Yeah.
to build our levels of awareness, just to sort of bring it to life, really. Mm.
I love this competency because I think it really, for us, self-awareness is so important. It's something that we live and breathe as coaches all the time. And I always say to people on the Coaching with Confidence program, once you start that process, it's kind of never ending to the point where it's almost, it is a bit addictive.
Well, it's a practice.
Yeah.
It's not that's the way I think about it. It is that it's not I've done self-awareness tick.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been on a course. It's a choice. It's a way of being. And you just got to keep going with it, haven't you? And that,
Even the bits you don't like.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. The bits that you're struggling with. But I think that you've got to make that choice. That self-awareness, I think, makes you a better coach. It makes you a better person. And because with that self-awareness, you've got a choice around what to do.
Yeah.
And I think that was the big learning for me, was as I became a coach, I thought I was self-aware. And then the more I sort of practiced that, I was like, okay, I've got different choices to make around how I want to live my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is that, we talk about this in all our programs, don't we? And I think, Matt, when you developed the original coaching programs from that position of self-awareness brings self-acceptance, that move from understanding yourself and then accepting who you are, it feels like a small step, but often it's a really big one.
Oh, yeah.
And then the confidence that comes from accepting yourself as you are, and then how that translates into how you lead. And we see that, don't we, in our other programs, how you lead, but also how you coach. That confidence as a coach comes from that acceptance and understanding of self, which is the basis of all our programs, isn't it?
Yeah, I think for me, it's a foundational piece for across all of MRA. So I think if you look across all of our programs of work, not just coaching and confidence, but actually when we're in the coach space for our clients or we're in the team space, it's a sort of foundational competency for me. I don't believe that you can actually move forward across any of those agendas until you've done that work.
Yeah.
You do the work on yourself.
And continue to do the work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'd always say to my clients, the hardest work you do is the work you do on yourself. And that's the work of self-awareness for me as a competency.
And I think this competency as well, when you look at it within the suite of the 8, is the one, I think there's a uniqueness to this that you don't get in other coach training programs. And I only really sort of realise that the more we tutor on the programme, the more you recognise that there is a real difference in our coach training and the impact that it has and the foundation then that it gives you to embrace the other competencies. And that for me is a real difference. When you look at other coach training programs out there,
I totally agree.
there is that real difference.
The amount of people that we work with, the feedback at the end is, I never expected this to be so impactful on me as a person. I thought this would give some new skills, and it does do that, but it also really starts this. And I really like, actually, for a lot of people, it's a bit of a reawakening, a kind of actually, what about me? And where am I at? What do I want? Where do I play well? Where do I not? And like say, that then leads to the acceptance. But yeah, I love that when we get that feedback around the personal sort of journey people that they get from it. Sorry, go on, sorry.
It's not a surprise, I was going to say, that it's not in all of these other coach training programs. If you think about, things like the Lezioni model, it's neglected. It's just not even on there as a requirement to being a fantastic leader or a fantastic team. So for me, it's not surprising it's not in other places, but again, for us, I think it's a massive differentiator, because you're going into the program with an awareness of yourself that just wasn't there.
Yeah.
Before you get into that content, you're already then filtering it through the lens of, oh, well, I'm an extrovert, so what does that mean when I behave in that way in the coaching situation versus, this hurry up driver of mine? And it just really brings to life those questions for you before you get into the taught elements in module 1. And I just think it's so powerful.
Yeah, so for me, there's that sense of if we are self-aware in the coaching space, then now the majority of our work is to enhance the client's self-awareness. And how can we help them be self-aware if we're not self-aware ourselves? So for me, the balance of all the tools, be it values or strengths or psychometrics, any of those pieces of work that allow us to be clear on how we're interacting with the client and therefore help the client to interact better with themselves and with us. That combination for me, I think, is a real sweet spot.
And it also lends itself to, and we say this throughout the program, is the learning that comes from the taught elements, but the embedding of that in when you're working with your clients, noticing what's happening for you as well as noticing what's happening for your clients. And if you don't have that foundational understanding of self, you don't have that conscious awareness, so you're not then continuing your own learning. And that again is another thing that I think this competency brings within this program, is embedding the learning through your own lens of self-awareness.
And building your resilience in a way, your own personal resilience around being a coach. I think if you've got that self-awareness that you're continuing to work on, you know when you are able to coach or not,
Yeah.
and be at your best for your clients. But I think because you've got that constant awareness, you're like, okay, I think I might be having some struggles myself, but I can coach, and because I'm very aware of where I need to be at and to be able to coach.
There's two things you said there I think I found fundamental, which is one, coach readiness. So from a self-awareness, am I ready to coach? And secondly, client readiness. So is the client in front of me ready to be coached? And actually, as a competency, none of those can be ticked if we don't have the baseline self-awareness. So and it's really fundamental in the coach and client readiness. The other thing I think is just useful to reference, because we can make self-awareness sound like a really positive experience, but I think it's really hard work.
It is.
And it can be quite emotional for people as they go on a transformational journey and they start to pick some things about themselves. It might be a sudden realization of mental health, or maybe they're suddenly realizing they've got some neurodivergence and they need to go on a very big personal journey. And it doesn't just sit within the coaching context. The competency can ignite some things for some people that are far more transformational than those that sit within the coaching space.
Yeah.
And we have to be really mindful as tutors that we might ignite something for somebody that they've then got to respond to. So
And it's that safe space. It is.
yes, exactly.
There. And I mean, it definitely feels like a privilege to witness that when people are willing to sort of step into that space. But knowing, I always feel when I'll start with a new cohort tomorrow on CWC, and I always feel that, okay, we're going on a journey together, and this is going to be an experience, and it feels like a real privilege, like to have that opportunity with other people.
Everyone's learning.
Yeah. But I also find that for myself, it keeps me sharp. Yeah. All right. Now I'm like, okay, as everybody goes through, and I always find that when I'm coaching someone one-to-one or training or, in whatever tutoring, whatever environment, that it always brings me back to, and what about me?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's so different from when I reflect back to being in the leadership role, that you're so caught up in the job that you don't have that opportunity, and you have to make time, you have to do that on purpose. And it's not easy.
Yeah.
And I never forget that around this. It's a lot easier to do when we're in an environment where we're all training together. The back when you're in the, you know, on the day job,
Yeah.
I am conscious of how difficult that can be and how people find that time.
So let's cool. Oh, sorry.
I was just thinking that that lends itself to the importance of reflection and self-reflection, which we talk about a lot in the program. When you're training to be a coach, it's an important skill anyway. It's so helpful to do that positive reflection or just doing reflection, which a lot of people don't do. And the self-awareness competency, if you can keep coming back to that when you're reflecting on your own coaching practice, when you're reflecting on you as a leader, as a coaching leader, what have you noticed about yourself? That starts to embed that understanding as well. So yeah, I think that taking time
Yeah.
and as you said, Matt, it's not just kind of done.
Yeah.
It's something you do you continue to do and continue to learn from, and reflection is part of that.
I was just thinking for a minute, what is it for people who are sort of watching this video, if they start their journey and look at this competency, what does it feel like to be coached by a coach who is not self-aware?
Mm-hmm.
So we'll probably all have been through those experiences, even when we're training people and we're doing practice sessions and we're noticing that the coach isn't self-aware. What is the impact on you as the client? Because for me, it's been really, I can really I think once you start becoming self-aware, you can sense when others are not. And it becomes more about them and a process and a transaction than actually about.
I think transaction's the key word. It becomes more transactional, and that next, you know, the competency around trust and rapport is struggling a bit because we've not, you know, you've not got the person showing up in their full as their full
So,
self.
self-awareness is so linked to emotional intelligence. So if your coach isn't reading you and you're not ready to be coached today, or something's really upset you, or you're avoiding something, you know.
Yeah.
You know as the client that your coach is not with you. They're not present. They're not absolutely in that space with you. Because they're unable to be.
Yeah.
And I think it's they're not with you and they're not for you, as in they're not there for you, they're there for themselves. And that is the biggest shift, I think, is if you have that self-awareness, you can put to one side elements that are not helpful. You can recognise in others what's going on for them and what they need from you, and you're able to put yourself very sort of present for that client. That is the big game changer, and that's often what's missing with coaches and with leaders. Like if you're stepping into that space, it suddenly becomes all about the leader rather than the person in front of you.
And what I love about this being the first part of the program as well is we're not about creating 8 identikit coaches in the cohort, 8 people. It's about the uniqueness, because who we are is how we coach and how we lead. And really uncovering that from day one and building on that means that, we're bringing brilliant, unique, individual coaches out into the world.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And it allows you, you know, as you build that self-awareness to know what you need to dial up or dial down. You know, like I can really remember I've had a lot of operational leadership jobs in the past. That's what I know. And therefore I have to dial that down. You know, I have a definite desire to sort of, okay, what's the plan? We can do this. And I have to dial that down. And I'm really aware that I can totally do that now because I've built that muscle up of saying, okay, you know, that's my own desire. That's my self-awareness. Put that to one side. What does this client need? And not what is my normal way of being.
Always in service.
Yeah, exactly. Totally in service of the client. And you can then adjust your style because you've got that self-awareness. Whereas if you haven't got that, you can't do that effectively. And therefore then I think you're able to coach more people because you adjust rather than, well, I'm like this and you've got to meet me. You're trying to meet the client, not them meet you.
So if we come back to who we are as how we coach, self-awareness is that fundamental building block. And without that, you cannot connect with who you are. And therefore, how you coach will not be in service of the clients and not from that position. Yeah, not transformational yet.
No.